Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. Psh, that ain't no sofa, but it's a red chair. Y'all, this is actually going to be one of my updates from the truck, except it's from a hotel room because it got dark out after today's proceedings. So I wanted to come on here and do a very quick update video, go through my notes, just like we've been doing from the truck ones or whatever. But I'm doing it from the hotel room, so it might kind of look official, but it's not. Okay, it's still kind of a laid back video. Okay. Now, also keep in mind, after I record this, I'm going to record one just on Lori's closing argument, so I can kind of dissect it a little bit more, whatever. So that might come out in the next couple of days or whatever. So that being said, obviously today was closing arguments, okay? Now what I did is I made a bunch of notes here, well, 3 pages worth. If you've been following me for my, truck updates, I'm just going to go down my little list here and read them. So the state obviously goes first, and they're talking about the timeline and whatnot. She's talking about, when Charles learned about those Kay Walker emails. Remember, Lori made that up or whatever. He learns about the affairs. He contacts Chad and Tammy and Adam, and all these people are learning this stuff and knowing this. And he says that everyone knew that Charles knew. She says that everyone knew that Charles knew. Now, July 9th, Charles is coming back. This is the first time that he's come back to the area since, knowing about the affair. Lori knows about this intervention that's going to take place. Lori starts working with everyone, and they go and they outline the phone calls that Lori makes. Lori talking to Alex for like an hour about how she'll be just like Nephi. The whole 9 yards. They go very in depth with this. They meaning the state. Now let me just scroll down here. So the state also outlines and pulls in other members of Lori's family who are kind of keeping her up to breast on what's going on with Adam in this whole situation. Summer's name is thrown in there. The state says that this was 12 minutes. So the event basically is like 12 minutes, and the state's like, Lori's going to make it out like this is this quick thing and but she's like, this is 12 minutes essentially of Lori antagonizing Charles with this whole phone thing. Then they go into, to me, which is a nail in the coffin, 47 minutes pass before Alex calls 911. 911 is told that a shooting just happened. The CPR is given. We know that that wasn't true. They talk about the screenshots that she was sending from the phone, meaning Charles's phone, of like the conversations and whatnot. They talk about how she doesn't tell anyone, meaning, Kay doesn't learn about this, family members don't learn. It's, this, oh yeah, by the way, I'm sending, Charles in a FedEx box, kind of a vibe. Now let me just scroll down here real quick. The state will outline how money is a motive in this. And then one thing that the state does that's really good, in my opinion, to finish out the closing arguments or throughout them, is playing snippets of testimony throughout, right? So the state will play Lori's phone call to Banner Insurance that we heard, where Lori's like, actually was shy, that whole thing, right? Okay, then huge thing here. They go over the text messages of Lori saying the whole thing before we got rid of him. Okay, remember these text messages where Lori's talking about the money and not getting it, and we're still going to get $4,000, whatever. And she's this whole thing of like, before we got rid of him. I mean, to me, this is such a confession, and the state will really utilize those words. Now, April 21st, they were going back into the emails and that kind of a thing. Karen Walker emails using her own phone number. We know this is Lori talking about making that Karen Walker up, which I think is so funny that she used the name Karen Walker for that. Another one, during this email, this is when she's asking Chad to fly out to Houston for book stuff. There's another time where she pretends to be Charles, asking him to come help her with a book. But keep in mind, this is all done to conceal the affair that was going on. Now, Charles will find these emails. He lets everybody know that he did. They talk about Lori's crazy delusions and beliefs. Then they'll go into testimony that was, we saw on the stand. So, for example, Christina Atwood. They talk about Alex, and when Christine was on the stand, remember this part, or if you haven't, she went into depth about some of the things that she heard them say. And this is, Alex saying, I just wish I could unalive Charles. And Lori talking about putting, prescription meds in his drinks, or his protein drinks and stuff. Then they will show Adam telling the story, Adam's testimony on the stand about Nephi and, Lori's, who that is, and, Lori's version of this and that, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so then they'll talk about Lori saying that JJ is in the car alone. And we said this too if you've been watching along with us here at the Sofa Squad. So, Lori's doing this whole thing during her testimony talking about, and we're basically, were y'all okay with JJ being in the car? I mean, Charles was okay with that. And it was like, well, Lori, you created that situation. And the state lays this out, and I'm hoping the jury saw that as well. And the state also is like, okay, so you're weird about this that you created, but also, he's sleeping in the house with, Alex with a gun who's, what's going to happen, right? So you can't pick and choose. Now, us on this side, we know what happened to JJ, and we know at the hands of who, like her conviction. So that's even a bigger slap in the face that she uses the children and the victims as pawns when necessary. So then the state will go into explaining how Lori was saying, and they'll show video footage of it and whatnot, of the swing in the back where Lori was like, well, he had the bat like this. And the state's like, well, we know that can't be true because he would have been shot through the arm. And basically saying how, they set the crime scene up during those 47 minutes where they didn't call 911. They meaning, well, mostly Alex, but obviously Lori in her own little way was involved with that. And then forgetting about which hand to put the bat in the air and the whole 9 yards. Okay, so the state will go on and on and on for a very long time, okay? If you're watching with it kind of got to the point where it's like, okay, now it was a very impactful closing, but it was definitely long. I mean, it was think like an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes. The state will also go very big into a lot of Lori's beliefs. They're bringing in all this type of stuff. Now, to me personally, to talk about the states, just to wrap it up with them, I would... Again, I always hate to say, I want to be shocked or whatever. I would still be shocked. However, we've seen that these verdicts can go in any direction, right? So nothing shocks me is what I'm getting at. For me personally, and again, I have a bias. I followed the case. I know all this different stuff about it, okay? But just listening to the definitions of the charges and the state saying boom, 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 I do not see how you could come up with a verdict other than guilty. Period, right? I do not see it. I think they completely proved conspiracy more than enough to get that. Now, Lori will do her closing argument. So Lori will go over the jury instructions, and she'll essentially be like, and the part of the law, it says blah. And she'll say, and this and another. And so she does that, but she does it in a very fast way. She'll say self-defense isn't a crime. She'll say, what did we learn? And she tries to talk about her interview and demeanor. She has this CD up there, and she's talking about this not being admitted. And my whole thing with that is I'm just and we'll talk about this in a minute, but the state's go ahead and look at it, right? But Lori is so convinced, if you look at this, you'll see, this will prove my story, okay? And I said this in the live chat today where I was like, these people, and by these people, I mean Lori's, Sarah Boone's, Daryl Brooks, Nancy Brophy, they are convinced in their world that if you look at this piece of evidence, you are going to see, yep, you're apt. Why is she even here? Y'all go let her out. Take the shock belt off. Let her out right now. And then when we see the evidence, we're like, but the reality is it's this makes you look even worse, okay? So this is one of those moments for me. She's so convinced of that. Maybe at this point it's just a red herring to her because, she knows that it's not going to be in there. So she's making it out to be something or whatever. I don't know. But they already played chunks of it. So anyways, then she'll talk about Alex's head injuries. And, she uses downplaying words or whatever. And then she'll say that the interview, so her, Alex Tiley, that they didn't know that they were recorded. She'll talk about her demeanor in that. She talks about Alex's head injuries. We went over that. Says they did. Yeah, we did that. Talk about the walk through the house. She'll say how the walk through when they go back, the cops and all that. It's not recorded. She's trying to kind of nitpick procedure and policy type stuff. She keeps trying to bring on evidence that wasn't in trial. She keeps getting objected. I think we had a 6 to 8 objection count during this. She says that law enforcement treated this as self-defense. She says that these events were shocking. She says that no one was swabbed for gunshot residue. Talks about no tests being done for several years. And let me just scroll down on here. And then she says this was treated as self-defense and that was a family tragedy. If you've been following, this is a go-to for Lori. She says, why does the state want to blame someone for this tragic event? She talks about her and Charles, where she's like, we were both trying to do what was right for JJ. Okay, we're trying to do what would need to be done. She says she wasn't mad about the money, but just disappointed, with the money that Kay got. She tries to teach the jury about Nephi, and thank the Lord the judge cuts that off. And then she says that the state is trying to retrofit a crime that does not exist. So Lori's key takeaways on this are basically almost I call it procedural, well, why did they do this and why didn't they do that? This was treated as self-defense. This wasn't that. I didn't feel a certain way about this, that, the other. Our demeanor was fine. We weren't shocked. We weren't this. We weren't that. We were very cooperative, so on and so forth. Now, the state's rebuttal, however you say it. So the state will get up there and they'll use these words and they'll say the execution of Charles Vallow is not a family tragedy. They said that we are not here to determine Alex's guilt, because Lori in her closing will bring it up, his name up in that way of find him not guilty. And it's well, what are we talking about here? Then they bring up that the got rid of him statement. Okay, so they bring this up again. She says to go on and watch that whole video that I was talking about a minute ago that Lori mentioned, and she's like, that's why we included it. Go ahead, watch the whole thing. They took extracts out of it to show to the court, and that's what Lori's trying to get at. It's the whole thing wasn't put there. If we saw her demeanor in it, we would know different. I'm just no, girl, the whole thing makes you look really bad. Okay, and then again they come back around at the very end. The we got rid of him is a confession. Okay, now they do, after that, they do the jury, they have to get rid of the alternates, and juror number 14 and number 5 were the alternates that got, taken away. And number 5, you hear them go, man, they were upset, right? Now, if she is found guilty, the state does want an aggravated factor phase as well. Okay, then they sent the jury out, and basically from what I could see from Nate and Justin and Gigi over at Pretty Lies and these people who were there or whatever, is that they were the jury went home for the evening, basically. So it sounds like they went in, kind of set things up, whatever. They'll come back tomorrow at 10:30, but you're probably watching this Thursday morning. So that being said, one of the other things too, courtroom coffer was in full effect. Okay, I'm talking, and I had the headphones on, blasting us off. So here's the thing that I said. I was like this. I was like, okay, you know what? I expected Lori to give us more baby voice. We didn't get that. She brought up a couple of good points when she was like, well, 5 years later they tested this and they did this and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, great. Maybe for another trial, right? She did not address any of the absolutely damning evidence, which is the timeline, their actual actions that is backed up with concrete evidence and receipts. You cannot get around that. There is absolutely no excuse that someone is shot twice, and that's one thing the state will say. That second shot, there's no reason for it, right? Arizona law, believes that does not allow you to execute somebody like that, period. And then call an ambulance 47 minutes later and lie to them. And then essentially, it took all the cops and stuff a little bit to realize, wait, none of this is adding up. So this whole thing, the Lord's like, well, we're being treated like this. It was self-defense. They didn't know at that point. So there's that. So that's the quick little update. Stay tuned. Again, if you're watching this, we'll be going live on the other channel today to watch Karen Reed and then watch Lori in the afternoon. So that is it. This is my quick little update. Just let me know what you think down in the comment section. I do appreciate you watching. And that's it. Leave a little something down in the comment section, and we will meet up on the next go round.